The geoprocessing model that we created in the last movie speeds up the process of analyzing the parks within the city of Seattle. But what if we wanted to alter some of the input variables? For instance, instead of a quarter-mile buffer, I wanted a tenth of a mile. We can make the model more interactive and easier to use by adding our own parameters to the model interface. First, we need to find it inside of the Toolboxes folder inside the project. I'll expand the Seattle toolbox and find Parks Near Schools. Then I can right-click on it and choose Edit to open it up in the Model Builder interface. Right now, the quarter-mile buffer is hard-coded inside of the Buffer tool. If I right-click on it, I can choose Create Variable, From Parameter, Distance, and that'll extract it into its own component of the model. It's this light blue circle right here. Let me click on it and just drag it in so I can see the whole thing. If I hover my mouse over it, we can see that it's hard-coded to a quarter mile, and if I double-click on it, we'll see the same thing. Let's go ahead and say OK to that. To make this a parameter, what I can do is right-click on it and choose the Parameter option. Now if I deselect it, we can see that there's a capital letter P in the upper right-hand corner. This capital P designates that this model will now be an input parameter that'll show up when the model is run. Because we want to eventually run this model in different cities, we don't want the input data to be hard-coded to Seattle. We can make both the schools and parks layers interactive parameters as well. Just right-click on each of these and choose Parameter. Then I'll come down to Parks and right-click on it and choose that as a parameter as well. Finally, I want to rename each of these three parameters so that it presents a clean user interface. I'll right-click on Seattle OSM Schools and choose Rename. Then we'll just call this Schools. We're going to make it so it's not specific to the city of Seattle. Go and press Enter to that. We'll come down to Seattle Parks and right-click on it and rename that to just Parks. And finally, this one over here for the distance, we'll right-click on it, we'll rename it, and we'll just call it Distance, and we'll get rid of this other stuff at the end. Now we also want to be able to name the output file. Right now it's hard-coded to this file here. It's called seattleparks_clip inside of the Seattle Geo database. If I right-click on that, I can turn that into a parameter. Then I can right-click on it and rename it, and we'll just call this output. Now I have 4 parameters in my model. Let's go ahead and save it. And we can go ahead and close the view. Then I'll double-click on the tool here in the toolbox, and that'll start running it. I now have a nice clean interface that just asks me for distance, schools, parks, and output. The model then takes these inputs and runs them through 2 geoprocessing tasks to output exactly what we asked for. By parameterizing the model, you can make it much more interactive and be able to use under different circumstances.